President Trump did a rambling rally in South Carolina a few days ago. It was just an off-topic smorgasbord of a shit show. Is it smorgasbord or smorgasborg? Is it with a G? No. Smorgasbord? D? I don't know how you spell that word. I don't even know why I tried to use that word when I obviously don't know how to spell that word. But anyway, I like how random this is already getting. I'm just like Trump. I just went after Trump for being an incoherent, rambling clown, and that's what I'm doing. That's hilarious. But I think his is funnier, to be honest. So I wanted to show you guys my favorite part here. I could show you like 4 or 5 different parts of this rally where you would be laughing, but I think this is my favorite part. Take a look.
We've never had a time like we have now. We've never had higher polls than we have now. Even Gallup, who treats me horribly. You know, polls are fake news also. You know, what they do is called suppression. They put out these horrible polls, and then they hope that everyone's going to say, hey, look, I like Trump, but he's got no chance of winning. Suppression. It should be illegal, actually, you know. You want to check these pollsters, you know, where are they coming from? They knew. We had one with ABC, I think it was ABC Washington Post, just before the election. Like a week before, we were down 12. Now, if you're down 12, okay, if you're down 12, it's over, if the polls are real. But I said, it can't be real. We just went to Michigan, we had 30,000 people. We just went to other places. Excuse me, we went to South Carolina, but I didn't come here that often. You know why? Because we were leading by a lot. So I said, if you don't mind, do you mind if I don't come back here? I'm going to go to places like that we have it a little bit closer. And nobody said, don't worry about it. They said, you stay out of here, Mr. President. Almost to be Mr. President. But it really has been an incredible journey for all of us. We are the super elite. We are the super elite. It is true. We are.
Okay, listen, man. I have to say, I do enjoy watching his rallies. I don't enjoy it from the perspective of like, oh, this is great, and he's doing great things for the country, because that's just objectively incorrect. But I enjoy watching them for the comedic value. And it is entertaining. You have to give him that. It is entertaining. It's also sheer lunacy, but it is entertaining. Okay, so let's go through this. I like how he starts out by bragging about his high poll numbers. His poll numbers are not that high. They haven't cracked 50%. They're in the range of a normal president at this point, which is upsetting, but they haven't cracked 50%. So it's not like historically he's doing better than other presidents at this point in time or doing good in the grander scheme of things. If you're not over 50%, that's nothing to brag about. So he's bragging about how high his polls are. They're not high. But also, he immediately pivots to Gallup treats me horribly and polls are fake news. But wait, then you can't, Don, listen, buddy. You can't praise the polls when they're up if you then go on to say they're fake news. Because that would mean, via logical deduction, the high polls are fake news also. If the polls are fake news, the polls are fake news. So, okay, they're fake news, therefore when they're up, they're fake. When they're down, they're fake. They're just fake. But no, what he does is, because this is a typical narcissistic buffoon who's not that smart and he hasn't really thought through this issue, what he does is he just, when they're high, okay, they count and they're good. What happened? I thought they were fake news. When they're down, oh, now they're fake news. He even went on, there was a different part of the rally where he even goes on to point that out. Like, oh, if you notice, I only bring up my poll numbers when they're high. Dude, yes, you do that, but that's one of the parts you're not supposed to say out loud, bro. That's one of the parts you're supposed to keep that on the low and be like, no, I'm being fair, I'm being objective here about my situation. I'll tell you what my numbers are. No. Oh, when they're high, I talk about them. When they're low, I don't talk about them. The polls are fake news except when they're high, and then they're not fake news. Gallup treats me horribly. Gallup, I've never seen, between Pew Research and Gallup, those are the two polling outlets that have less than no bias. I mean, they are so goddamn boring. They frame questions in a way where it's like you couldn't sniff out bias from a mile away. You couldn't sniff out bias from a mile away. That's a weird thing to say. Anyway, and then, I also should point out, because he talks about, the polls were so wrong and so bad during the election. Well, yes and no. They weren't bad in the sense that the overall poll numbers were actually pretty spot on, because Hillary did end up winning by millions of votes. So, she was up by 3 points maybe in the national polls, and she ended up winning by 1 point overall? So that's well within the margin of error. Just the issue is the way the support was dispersed around the country was massively biased in favor of Trump for him to win, because he got the states he needed, like the Rust Belt, for example. She got so many more votes in, like, California, for example, where it's like, okay, but that didn't mean anything, because the way our system works with the Electoral College, she didn't pick off the right states that she needed to pick off. So the polls weren't that far off. The people who were wrong were the people who were analyzing the polls. Like Huffington Post, like 98% chance Hillary's going to win. That was horribly wrong. But the raw poll numbers on their own were not that wrong. And then finally, guys, he doubled down on the thing he said last week that we covered. The elite thing. In fact, he went beyond doubling down because he added something to it. So last week he did a rally where he was talking about how, the elites, why is it that the other side's elites? I think I'm elite. In fact, I'm more elite than they are. Dude, again, you're not supposed to say that. You ran against the elites. You put it in your fucking ads. You put it in your speeches about how I'm here to fight for the little guy and we're not elite. The elites are bad. And we're here to... The forgotten man will never be forgotten again. But he flipped that in the last rally. He's like, no, elite, yeah. I am elite. I'm more elite than they are. Oh, God. And then now he says, I'm the super elite and you're the super elite. Dude, you're not... He has no... There's no philosophy guiding him. There's no ideology guiding him. He's just a shit talker. And I get it. Some people might find that appealing in the sense that it's so like a non-politician. But it's also fucking crazy, man. He's crazy. He is just a stream of consciousness. There is a teleprompter there, but according to the journalist there, he kept going off the whole fucking time. He's just like shooting from the hip and then maybe getting back on the script for a little bit, but then going and shooting from the hip again. And there was one point where he goes after Jimmy Fallon. He said that Jimmy Fallon called him and said, thank you for the monster ratings. This was back when Trump was a candidate. And remember, Jimmy Fallon did that thing where he like rubbed Trump's head or whatever. He said that Jimmy Fallon called him and said, thank you, Mr. President, for the monster ratings. And Jimmy Fallon actually responded to this because that got some coverage. And Jimmy Fallon was like, not only did I not call him, I don't even have his fucking number. I've never spoken to this guy outside of the show ever in my life. So that's such a gratuitous, unnecessary lie from Donald Trump, but that's what he does. He's just a shit talker. He just rambles. He just says anything. It's almost like he tries to create his own reality that's divorced from reality. It's almost like he's the ultimate postmodernist. Like, I'm just going to create whatever, it's my truth. I'm going to give you my truth. My truth is what I'm about to spew for you. But it's not true. It's not actually true. So I don't know how, given what his policies are and what he's actually doing to the country, I don't know how anybody could support him. Like, I could see the appeal of this kind of stuff back when there was a chance he might be populist, because half the time he said populist shit. Now that we know he's not a populist, you just see this for the kind of deranged rambling that it is. This is a man with no core, no philosophy, no ideology, and all he's like an empty shell of a human who's just up there to feed off that crowd and get that reaction. And he goes back to the greatest hits every time in order to do that, whether it's lock her up or, all that stuff that he used to say. So my polls are great, but polls are fake news. And we're super elite. Thank you, Mr. President. What an enlightening rally.